From the outside looking in, my life seemed like the perfect picture of suburban bliss. Every morning, the rising sun cast a golden glow over my peaceful neighborhood, promising another day of predictable routine and quiet stability. The rows of identical houses stood like silent sentinels, each one a testament to order and tranquility. But beneath that calm exterior, something had shifted. I could feel it, even if I couldn't yet put a name to it. Driving through the tree-lined streets in my sleek silver sedan, I tried to focus on my work, strategizing, planning, making moves that had built my business into a success. But lately, my mind kept wandering back home. A fleeting smile from my wife that didn't quite reach her eyes. A lingering glance she cast toward the neighbor's yard. The way her demeanor had changed, subtle but undeniable. There was something in the air, an unspoken tension, like the low hum of a storm gathering just beyond the horizon. When I pulled into the driveway of my pristine home, I hesitated before stepping out. The neatly trimmed hedges, the freshly cut lawn, the carefully placed flower beds, everything was as it should be. And yet, as I pushed open the front door, a chill crept down my spine. Something was off. Inside, the house was quiet, too quiet. The soft ticking of the clock on the mantel, the lingering scent of freshly brewed coffee, the muted hum of a distant lawnmower, it all painted a picture of normalcy. But beneath it, something didn't sit right. Moving through the house, my steps felt heavier than usual, weighed down by an unshakable sense of unease. I found myself in my study, the one place where I could shut out the world and lose myself in the comforting rhythm of work. But today, I couldn't focus. I sat at my desk, staring out the window at the deceptively peaceful street. The more I thought about it, the more I realized the small ways my wife had changed. The soft way she smiled, now tinged with something I couldn't quite place. A new distance in her eyes, as if she were looking beyond me rather than at me. The more I tried to shake it off, the more the feeling grew. As the afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room, I felt like I was seeing my life in a way I never had before. A world bathed in sunlight, but harboring secrets in every darkened corner. And in that moment, I knew, whatever was happening in my home, whatever truth was waiting to be uncovered, it was only a matter of time before it shattered everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the very idea of home itself. At first, the signs were easy to dismiss. Little things that, on their own, seemed harmless. A moment of hesitation before she answered a question. A glance that lingered too long in a direction it shouldn't have. A subtle shift in the way she carried herself, as if there was a part of her she was keeping just out of my reach. And then there was him. Our neighbor, Ryan. A well-groomed, confident guy with the kind of charm that made people naturally gravitate toward him. He was always around, at barbecues, at neighborhood gatherings, even just passing by at the right moment, flashing his easy smile. At first, I told myself it was nothing. But as I watched, really watched, I started to notice things I couldn't ignore. The way her laughter changed when he was near. Once warm and unguarded, it now carried a sharpness, like an invitation meant for someone specific. The subtle way she adjusted her posture when he walked into the room, as if she wanted to be noticed. The glances they exchanged, too fleeting to be outright suspicious, but too charged to be meaningless. It all formed a pattern, one I didn't want to believe. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the dining room in golden light, the tension between us became unbearable. The sound of clinking silverware, the quiet murmur of conversation, it all faded into the background as I studied her, searching for something I wasn't sure I wanted to find. I finally spoke, my voice steady but edged with something raw. "What's going on with you and Ryan?" She barely looked up, a small, almost amused smile playing on her lips. "You're imagining things," she said lightly, spearing a piece of food with her fork as if we were discussing the weather. But her eyes, they weren't dismissing me. They were daring me. A slow-burning anger unfurled in my chest. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. There was no denial, no protest. Just a quiet, infuriating confidence. Ryan had always been the friendly, easygoing type, but now, even his presence felt like an intrusion. He had a way of making himself at home in places he didn't belong, and lately, it felt like my wife was one of them. The more I paid attention, the more I saw. The way their conversations would drop to a whisper when they thought I wasn't listening. The way she'd brush off my questions, as if I was the one being unreasonable. I wanted to believe it was all in my head. That I was overreacting, seeing ghosts where there were none. But deep down I knew. I knew because I'd seen this kind of thing before, not in my own marriage, but in the world. In the way people drift when they think no one is watching. In the way temptations creep in, quiet at first, until they take root. And I knew because I could feel it in my gut. Something was happening. And it was only a matter of time before I found out exactly what it was. The night I knew for certain was like any other. Or at least, it should have been. I had just gotten home from work, stepping through the front door of my meticulously kept house, expecting the usual sounds of home, the faint hum of the dishwasher, the soft murmur of the TV in the background, the occasional clatter of dishes from the kitchen. But instead, I was met with an eerie silence, the kind that prickled at the back of my neck. I glanced around, taking in the details. The living room was neat, too neat, as if no one had been in it for hours. Then my eyes landed on her. She stood by the window, her back to me, her posture relaxed, too relaxed. And the dress she was wearing, it was different. Bold, form-fitting, something I hadn't seen her wear in years. "Going somewhere?" I asked, my voice coming out steadier than I expected. She turned, giving me a small smile, the kind that was meant to diffuse tension rather than answer a question. "Just felt like dressing up," she said casually. And that's when I knew. It wasn't for me. I sat on the couch, watching her, pretending to scroll through my phone while my mind raced. My memory flickered back to all the small things, the way she had started checking her phone more often, the way her mood would shift at odd times, the way her laughter had started to sound different, less like it belonged to me. Then there were the nights she stayed out later than usual. "Just catching up with friends," she'd say, her tone light, her eyes unreadable. And I had wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But the weight in my gut told me otherwise. As I sat there in the dim light of our home, the air thick with something unspoken, I made a decision. No more second-guessing. No more pretending not to see the cracks forming beneath the surface. I was going to find out the truth. And once I did, there would be no going back. The first thing I did was set up cameras. Not in an obsessive way, not out of paranoia. At least, that's what I told myself. It was just about getting clarity, about putting the pieces together in a way that couldn't be denied. I started small. A discreet camera in the living room, another near the front door, and one in the study. Places where nothing should have been happening if everything was as normal as she claimed. I didn't touch the bedroom. That felt like a line I wasn't ready to cross. Not yet. The first few days, nothing happened. Just the usual routines, the quiet moments, the passing of time in a house that still looked like a home. And for a brief second, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I had let suspicion get the better of me. But then, the footage started painting a different story. It wasn't blatant at first. Just little things. The way she stood a little too close to Ryan when they talked near the fence. The way her body angled toward him when they were in the same room. The way she checked the time, as if waiting for something, before leaving the house. Then came the moment that shattered every last ounce of doubt I had left. Late one evening, when she thought I was working late, I watched her on the screen as she paced in the kitchen, her phone in her hand. She was texting someone. And then, as if on cue, she checked herself in the reflection of the microwave, smoothing down her hair, adjusting her dress. And then Ryan showed up. He didn't knock. He didn't hesitate. He just walked in. My breath caught in my chest as I watched them stand there, close, too close. She smiled at him in a way that she hadn't smiled at me in months. He reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers grazing her cheek. And she let him. I paused the footage, my hands gripping the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. That was it. That was all the proof I needed. I sat there for a long time, staring at the frozen frame on the screen, feeling the weight of it settle over me. The moment of truth had arrived. And now, it was up to me to decide what to do with it. I wasn't the type to explode. I didn't believe in making a scene, in letting emotions dictate my next move. No, if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. The moment I saw them together, something inside me shifted. The pain, the disbelief, the helplessness, it all burned away, leaving only cold, calculated focus. I spent the next few days planning, making sure every step was measured, every detail accounted for. If she thought she could lie to my face, betray me under my own roof, then she was about to find out just how much I had been paying attention. The first step was gathering evidence. I saved the footage, backing it up in multiple places, making sure there was no way for her to spin this into something innocent. Then, I started setting the stage. I reached out to a divorce lawyer, someone sharp, ruthless. I laid everything out for them, every detail, every inconsistency. When they saw what I had, their response was immediate. "We can use this." Good. Next, I made sure to separate our finances. Quietly, subtly. She wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. And then, the final move, confrontation. I waited until the perfect moment. A quiet Sunday evening, just like any other. She was in the living room, curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. Like she hadn't spent the last few months turning our marriage into a joke. I walked in, standing in the doorway, my arms crossed. "We need to talk." She barely glanced up. "What about?" I took a deep breath, letting the weight of the moment settle between us. "About Ryan." That got her attention. Her fingers tightened around her phone, her posture stiffening just slightly, but it was enough. I stepped forward, pulling out my own phone, tapping the screen. "I want you to watch something." And then I played the footage. The color drained from her face as she watched herself on the screen, laughing with him, touching him, letting him into our home. Every moment of betrayal captured in crystal-clear detail. For the first time in a long time, she was speechless. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, searching for something. Maybe a way out, maybe a lie to cling to. But I wasn't interested in hearing it. "This is over," I said, my voice steady, final. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And in that silence, I saw it, the moment she realized she had lost. But for me, this was just the beginning. The days that followed were a blur of quiet destruction. I didn't yell. I didn't beg for explanations. I simply set things in motion, letting the weight of her actions collapse everything around her. The divorce papers were ready within a week. My lawyer made sure there was no wiggle room, no chance for her to manipulate the situation. Thanks to the evidence I had gathered, I wasn't just walking away, I was taking everything. The house, the assets, the financial security she had gotten so comfortable with. She tried to fight it at first. The same way she had dismissed my suspicions, she dismissed the reality of what was happening. She pleaded, saying it was a mistake, that it hadn't meant anything, that we could fix this. But I wasn't interested in fixing something she had already destroyed. And Ryan, his life unraveled even faster than hers. I made sure his wife, yes, his wife, got a copy of the footage as well. The moment she saw it, his world caved in. From what I heard, she kicked him out immediately, changed the locks, and filed for divorce before he even had a chance to beg for forgiveness. His reputation gone. The easy charm that had once made him the center of every neighborhood gathering? Meaningless. People talk. And when the truth came out, Ryan became a ghost. No one wanted to be associated with a guy who had spent months sneaking around with another man's wife. The same people who once admired him now whispered behind his back. The invitations stopped. The smiles turned cold. He lost everything. And her. She stayed in the house for a few weeks after I left, but it didn't take long for reality to sink in. Without me, without the stability I had provided, she was lost. I moved on. Not quickly, not easily, but deliberately. I took the time to rebuild, to remind myself that life didn't end just because someone I trusted had thrown it away. One evening, months later, I drove through the old neighborhood, just out of curiosity. The house that had once been ours stood dark and lifeless, the yard overgrown, the windows empty. And there she was, sitting alone on the porch, staring out at nothing. For a moment, I wondered if she thought about me. If she regretted it. If she had finally realized that the thrill of deception had cost her more than she had ever imagined. But I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Because I had already won.